Sheena was just an orphan kid who met an untimely end, only to find himself reincarnated into a whole new world. But this time, the 7 gods decided to spice things up by gifting him a cheat leveling system, cranking his stats to the max and turning him into the most overpowered human ever. But before that, on one fine day, as Sheena was strolling home, he stumbled upon a scene straight out of a slapstick comedy. People stampeding out of a store like they were fleeing from Godzilla, and 2 not-so-good-looking bitches tripped over each other right next to him. The thief waved his knife like he was auditioning for a cooking show and charged at the ladies. But rather than hightailing it out of there, Sheena dashed right at him and took him down like a WWE wrestler. Amidst the chaos, he yelled at the gals to f*** out of here. But the next thing he knew, he was spouting red sauce like a fountain, scaring the pants off the bandit who bolted faster than a cheetah. As his life force began to fade away, he felt a twinge of satisfaction for rescuing the 2 bitches, but couldn't shake the regret, making them cry. Just as he was about to clock out for good, he found himself waking up in a room straight out of a mystery novel, with a sobbing maid calling him Kane, confusing the heck out of him. Milk Mommy swooped in for a hug, squeezing Kane like a tube of toothpaste and asking if he remembered his milkers. I mean if he remembered his mom or not. Kane's brain felt like it was tangled up in spaghetti, but one glance at the mirror sent him into a panic station, questioning his entire existence. After snoozing for a solid week, the maid suspected Kane's fever had scrambled his noggin like eggs in a blender. His mom ordered Sylvia to prepare some soup, and once they vacated the premises, Kane was left scratching his head about his sudden regression to childhood. He pondered if he had stumbled into a cliché anime plot or gotten sucked into another world like some unlucky protagonist. This whole situation smelled very bad, so Kane wasted no time tearing his room apart in search of mythical weapons. But seeing his little pistol, he wonders how much time it will take to turn into AK-47. Sylvia thinks his water tap must be leaking, but poor Kane bawled his eyes out, mourning the loss of his dignity. Once she vacated the premises, Kane managed to squeeze both her tits.
What did he say?
I mean, Kane managed to squeeze every drop of juicy info out of her just like a lemon. Turns out, his name is Kane Von Silford, a 3-year-old boy born to Garm and Sarah, with a sister named Rainey. But wait, there's more. Garm is a big shot, and has a side wife named Maria, who popped out 2 older sibs for Kane. His old man is a big cheese margrave commanding an army to fend off forest monsters at the kingdom's borders. Kane's ears perked up at the mention of monsters, and Sylvia also piqued his excitement, saying there are also magic-wielding adventurers. However, Sylvia promised to sprinkle some magic dust on Kane if he could read, so he dove headfirst into the ABCs. When Kane stumbled upon the wonders of magic, he decided he'd rather stick around in this world for the long haul. After all, back in his old stomping grounds, his folks had already kicked the bucket, and his last living relative had just kicked the bucket too, leaving Kane with nothing. At the dinner table, Garm discovers his little kid can already type at a speed of 69 words per minute, and Rainey proudly boasts that he's got a knack for numbers too. Sarah beams with pride, thinking her boy's a bona fide genius, while Kane, ever the charmer, showers Sylvia, their maid, with compliments, dubbing her the queen of all maids. And Sylvia sticks the milk that she extracted from his mother's plot, and Garm, feeling like he's missed out on all the fun, wishes he'd been around to catch the milky madness in action. Suspicion brews in his parents' minds as they wonder why their little rascal has suddenly become a bookworm. Kane brushes off the interrogation with a cheeky grin, insisting he's just thirsty for knowledge to become the ultimate adventurer. Garm, impressed by his son's newfound thirst for wisdom, hands over his stash of magic tomes, though he throws in a cautionary tale. No spell slinging until he's been dunked in holy water at the ripe old age of 5. His mom figures he's got to wait until he's wizard material, but little does she know, our sneaky protagonist is already conjuring flames with a flick of his wrist. Realizing he's got magical mojo at his fingertips, he's living every geek's fantasy. But alas, in his enthusiasm to cast another spell, his hands decide to play with fire, quite literally, and things start spiraling out of control. Kane's convinced these newfound powers will make him the ultimate dark sorcerer, the envy of every anime enthusiast. All that's left to tick off his otaku checklist is a sibling love affair. In walks Rainey, uncovering that she knows all about him. Turns out, she's caught wind of his covert research into the outside world, much to Kane's relief, who's grateful for having such a clueless sister. So, from that point on, his sister becomes his crash course instructor in worldly matters, spinning tales of the legendary adventurer who laid the foundation for their kingdom, Yia. Cain brushes off the fact that he knows a person named Yia who is a lonely, fat, ugly, parentless, horny, loser, eater of a person, but that lonely loser is from another anime. After soaking up all the juicy details about the world's wonders, Cain couldn't keep it in his pants for 2 more years until his baptism. But the big day finally arrived. He strutted in, rocking a snazzy new outfit, and his family was all like, "Dang, look at this handsome devil." They sit in horse carriages and paraded through town, and Cain was blown away by the medieval vibe. He is curious about the whole blessing of the gods thing, so he asks his sister to show her status window. He is marveled by her stats, but does a double take when he sees she loves him and is not brother-sister type.
Today we are talking about incest.
She snapped at him to forget what he saw, and Cain played dumb like a pro. His dad jumped in with a lecture about magic protections, which come in levels from 1 to 5, all handed out by the gods to show who's got the goods in different fields. They hit the church for Cain's big moment, and the priest kicked off the baptism ceremony. The pillars of the gods lit up like a celestial disco, and suddenly, Cain was zapped into a meet and greet with all 7 gods. They rolled out the red carpet, calling him by his real name, Sheena. Cain was like, "What the f***?" Zanum, the god of creation, introduces himself. But Cain thinks Christmas came early because this guy looks like Santa Claus, who is going to clap him. Zanum, says he can hear everything Cain's thinking and starts talking about his reincarnation. Turns out, Cain's death was a cosmic joke. Even if he hadn't played hero, he would have tripped, and everyone would have restrained the criminal. Basically, he isekai'd himself because he wanted to simp over 2 girls.
Emotional, damn it!
The goddess apologizes for being so harsh, but says they reincarnated him because he met his doom doing a good deed. Even though he looks like a clueless idiot, Cain isn't upset at all. After all, he's now in a loving family and can use magic, fulfilling one of his wildest dreams. Reno, the god of magic, gives him magic protection, applauding his effort. Zanum grants him protection too, along with the god of war, turning him into the ultimate warrior. The god of technology steps in and upgrades his brain so he can stop simping over women and starts clapping them. The god of commerce grants him the judgment ability and an item box, setting him up to be the richest around. Then the god of earth gives him the greatest gift of all time, the biggest Zanum tells Cain his status window will show all his protection effects, and then chuckles like Santa before sending him back. The priest has never seen the statues light up like a disco ball, so Garm demands to see Cain's status window right away. Cain gets a bad feeling about this, so he bolts to the bathroom to check his status in private. What he sees is mind-blowing. All his protections are level 10, double the highest level in this world. Realizing he needs to keep this under wraps, he spots a secret ability called Status Conceal, and uses it to hide his OP stats. That night at dinner, his family wishes him a happy birthday. Garm insists on seeing his status window, so Cain reluctantly shows it. The family is gobsmacked to see he has protection from all 7 gods and a magic power of over 340,000. At 5 years old, he's already stronger than most mages in the nation. His father panics and makes him promise to keep his stats a secret. Cain, feeling like he just got grounded for being awesome, agrees and goes to bed. Eyeing a notebook on summoning magic, Cain, knowing Sylvia won't be around to scold him, decides to summon a cute pet in the mansion's backyard. He activates the summoning circle, expecting a fluffy bunny, but instead, a giant monster appears. His sister and Parma scream in fear, and it's deja vu for Cain, but this time, he swears it will be different. He charges at the monster like a wannabe superhero, but gets swatted away and feels his stomach turn into jelly. Despite the agony, Cain vows not to let his loved ones cry anymore. He wants to be their knight in shining armor, so he uses every ounce of his energy to cast a spell that makes the monster vanish into thin air. As he lies on the floor, he catches a glimpse of fluffy cat ears and wishes he could have petted them one last time. He regrets making people cry and worries he's about to get isekai'd again. But that is not how anime works. And after a few minutes, Cain wakes up, surprised to find he's still in one piece. This time, the people he protected aren't in tears. He realizes his powers in this world can actually save people. After some time later, on his birthday, during the ceremony, his father asks him about his future aspirations. Cain boldly declares he wants to be like him, the husband of 2 wives so he can threesome. Cain boldly declares that he wants to travel the lands and help all kinds of people, especially MILFs. He also wants to protect everyone's smiles, especially the smiles of MILF who have massive, hearts. He will become an adventurer. Hearing the determination in his voice, Garm promises to hire a tutor for him. Inside his bedroom, Cain wondered what his tutor would be like. But when she finally arrived, he felt so excited he ran to the window and accidentally teleported outside, landing in a rather awkward and revealing position.
Yeah, boy.
He apologized to the girl as the butler introduced his two tutors, Milky, Millie, and Nina. Inside the mansion, Millie had a hard time introducing himself, while Cain can't stop himself noticing that Nina is an elf. Garm told them not to be so formal, and Cain asked them to talk to him as if he were their friend. Millie, thrilled to teach him, began lessons right away in the mansion's training area. Cain demonstrated his swordsmanship skills, shocking Millie. To evaluate his abilities, she challenged him to a mock duel immediately. Cain rushed forward, his sword striking with such force that Millie barely managed to hold him back. Nina wondered aloud if he had received the war god's blessing, and Cain sheepishly admitted that was supposed to be a secret. Millie gasped and begged Nina to teach him some magic before his sword could penetrate her insides. Nina revealed she had level 3 magic protection, but Cain had already mastered the basics. He demonstrated his ability to summon magic from all the elements, his spells powerful enough to pierce through stone targets. Millie and Nina exchanged impressed glances, both realizing they had quite the prodigy on their hands. Cain casually reveals he's got the magic god's protection too, making Millie worry they can't teach him anything. He pulls a towel out of his item box like it's no big deal, and the girls realize they're basically useless against his skill level. So how about we take this outside? Cain suggests, aware that staying in the mansion might lead to accidental property damage. Millie and Nina think it's a great idea since he's never left the premises. They explain to Garm that Cain's abilities might wreck the mansion. Garm panics, realizing his son is this strong already. He'd hoped Cain would mature a bit more first. Reluctantly, Garm agrees to let him go outside on the condition that he stays out of the forest. Cain promises, and for the first time, he leaves the mansion with his tutors. Nina begins his magic training by asking him to demonstrate intermediate level magic. Cain immediately readies a fire spell and casts it at a stone, creating a giant crater and knocking both girls off their feet. They wonder if using so much mana tired him out, but Cain laughs it off without breaking a sweat. Millie realizes there are enemies nearby when a rabbit jumps out to attack her. Her attack misses, and the rabbit rushes at Cain, but he dodges and shoots air bullets to defeat it. Lily wonders if he's going to sell the drops, but Cain wants to show it to his family, so he stores it in his item box. Lily is amazed since she's been saving up for years to get a magic bag, a less powerful version of his item box. Meanwhile, Nina uses her search ability to scan within 300 meters for monsters, hoping there are no more surprises. Cain thinks Nina's spell is super cool, so he tries to copy it and surprises everyone by pinpointing the exact location of 4 rabbits. Nina is shocked that he can even count the specific number of monsters. Cain sprints towards the rabbits, but Millie tells Nina to just give up on trying to keep up. They defeat the rabbits together, but one of them makes a break for it. Cain tries to chase it, but Millie warns him never to go into the forest, where legendary monsters lurk. Every few decades, all the monsters in the forest try to break into the city, which is why their walls are so fortified. Cain realizes how dangerous it is but dreams of exploring it one day. That night, he notices he's already reached level 8 after just a few rabbit battles. He investigates the reason for his massive level up and discovers that his God-chosen title grants him 100 times more XP and 100 times the ability points per level up. Cain realizes his power already surpasses most humans, and if this keeps up, the entire nation might see him as a threat. A few months later, Millie takes Cain to the Adventurers Guild to fight stronger monsters. Rudy asks what brings them in today. Millie wants to find some quests perfect for Cain. Just then, a man mocks Millie and Nina for being D-rankers babysitting a kid. As a D-ranker himself, he tells Millie to ditch the kid so he can show her what a real D looks like. Nina tells the guy to back off, but Cross is done with her sass and picks her up while his goons restrain Millie. Just as he's about to get handsy, Cain grabs his arm and declares he won't let anyone mess with his girlfriends. I mean tutors. Millie begs Cain to run, but Cain insists it's time for some hands-on training and lands a solid smack on Cross's face. Cross recovers and swings, but Cain dodges every punch, even catching his sword with his fingers before tossing him out like trash. The other two hold a knife to Millie, but Cain swiftly disarms and boots them out. Nina hugs Cain, promising she'll protect him next time. After years of training and bonding, Cain has grown into a tall, charming man. Sylvia tells him his final class with his tutors is in a few days. Cain is eager to find a way to thank them, remembering Millie wanted a magic bag. So, that night, he sneaks into the deepest parts of the dark forest. A blood ogre appears before him, followed by an earth dragon. The guards think a monster rampage is starting, but Kane handles it like a pro. The entire army was deployed, with Garm leading the troops to defeat the monsters. Meanwhile, Kane collected everything he needed and teleported away, accidentally leaving behind his towel. Garm arrives at the scene, and his subordinate informs him that all the monsters in the forest have been eliminated. Wondering who could be so overpowered, Garm looks at the ground and finds the towel, shocking him to his core. The final day of Kane's tutoring arrives, leaving Millie and Nina with a bittersweet feeling. They've spent so much time with him, and now it's graduation day. They congratulate him on his hard work over the last 3 years. Kane thanks them for everything and hopes the magical bags he's made for them show his gratitude. He collected materials from the Blood Ogre and Earth Dragon in the forest, but told them not to worry, they're just regular bags that won't hold too much, just an entire mansion. Millie points out that the most expensive magic bag can only carry 2 carriages worth of items, making these bags national treasure class. She's worried people might try to steal them, but Kane reveals he enchanted them so that if anyone else carries these bags, they'll be as heavy as everything inside them. Millie and Nina thanks him by getting on their knees to give him the blow. They both show their appreciation. They tell him that if he ever needs their help when he grows up, he can always come to them for anything he needs. At that moment, their contract ended, and Kane felt like he grew a little more, both in skill and maturity. And let's just say, I felt a little rise in my pants, spirits too. Months later, deep in a cave, Kane takes on a red dragon and delivers a single strike that turns the beast into a morning snack. After taking down one of the top tier monsters, he checks his level and discovers his magic is over 80 million. He also gets the title of Dragon Slayer. Fast forward 2 years, and Kane is now a 10-year-old with a big birthday bash on the horizon. He's heading to a noble event, which will take a week to reach, assuming the monsters don't decide to throw a party of their way. So, Kane uses his search ability to scan a 3-kilometer radius, only to find that monsters are crashing the soldiers' parade. He tells his dad to step on it so they can rescue the troops. But since the horses are slower than my grandma in a wheelchair, Kane leaps out of the carriage like Spider-Man with a magic wand, activating his wind magic to zoom toward the action. He arrives just in time to save a soldier from a monster buffet. Kane uses his air cutter ability to shred every beast in his path like they're made of paper. Some monsters, however, are still aiming for the carriage, so Kane summons his sword and slices through them like he's cutting through butter, until he faces the big boss. Kane dodges the beast's attacks, and enchants his sword with fire, making short work of the monster. As the soldier warns him to stay away from the carriage, Kane tries to introduce himself as the son of Garm. Just then, Garm's soldiers arrive and realize they've been about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. One soldier collapses from blood loss, but Kane swoops in, holds him tight, and uses his healing magic to instantly get everyone back on their feet. Garm finally shows up and takes in the scene, realizing he's basically stepped into a disaster movie set, but his attention is quickly grabbed by the royal crest on the carriage. Out pop 2 royal ladies, Talisha, the princess, and Silk, the duke's daughter. They shower Garm with thanks for saving them, but he quickly points out that it was actually his son Kane who performed the heroics. Talisha almost faints, so Kane casts a soothing spell to calm her nerves. The spell works wonders, turning their stress into bliss, but it seems like the spell also had a little extra charm mixed in. Talisha, feeling all kinds of grateful, rushes over to thank Kane with what can only be described as enthusiastic appreciation. Silk, meanwhile, grabs his hand and gushes about how he's the greatest swordsman she's ever seen. Talisha, not one to be outdone, declares Kane's going to be hers, and suddenly, they're in a full-blown fight over who's gonna give Kane the blow. They drag Kane to their enormous carriage, right under Garm's nose. Inside the plush carriage, Kane wonders why they're all snuggling up to him like he's a human-sized teddy bear. Talisha insists he calls her Tellies, and Silk insists on Silk, while they continue to charm him with everything they've got. Kane's spell was so powerful that it practically set the mood romantic, and both monsters, feeling the magic, kept trying to woo him until Isha arrived. The soldier announces they're finally nearing the rest area, and Kane can't help but think, well, this is a hot mess. But the girls, Talisha and Silk, are adamant about getting some quality threesome with him once they arrive. Cain tries to make a stealthy escape, but Talisha and Silk insist on spending the night with him, or they'll be scared stiff. Garm tries to intervene, saying it's a bit inappropriate, but the girls counter with dramatic claims of trauma and fears of a dragon or snake attack. So, they want to spend the night with Cain's snake. Garm says they can spend the night with his snake, but Silk counters it by saying that his snake is far smaller in comparison to Cain's snake. They beg Cain to stay the night with them. He reluctantly agrees, on the condition that they keep the beds as far apart as possible. Garm comments that while he might have 2 wives, he's about to double his headaches. Inside the bedroom, the girls start their charm offensive by begging Cain to sleep next to them, and they push the beds close together. But just pushing the beds together doesn't cut it for them. They end up using Cain as their personal body pillow all night. At the ripe age of 10, Cain might be going to lose his virginity, I think. He barely sleeps a wink through the night, and after a few more sleepless nights, he finally arrives at the capital. The head knight greets them, and the girls are still clinging to Cain like he's their favorite new toy. The knight bows deeply, clearly in awe of Cain's heroic deeds. Apparently, word of Cain's epic save has spread like a wildfire. Cain then takes out the bodies of fallen soldiers to be returned to their families. As the bell rings, Cain tries to sneak out, but the knight informs him he's about to meet the king, and every major politician is in the royal court for Cain's grand audience. Cain takes a bow, and the king's count showers him with praise, applauding his ability to single-handedly fend off 50 orcs. For his trouble, the king gifts him a mansion, 10 platinum coins, and the honorary title of baron. Not everyone is thrilled. Some chubby bureaucrat named Cornigo stumbles in, grumbling that it's unfair for a kid to get such riches. The king tells Cornigo to zip it before his mouth grows bigger than his belly. The king says he would have never been able to save the girls in his position. This kingdom needs more knights like Cain, so my decision is final. Hearing this, Cornigo hightails it out of there, and the king, with a steely gaze, insists Cain accept the awards with no room for argument. Cain, ever the diplomat, humbly accepts his reward. But wait, there's more. The king wants a private chat with him. As they wait, Garm gives Cain a pat on the back and jokes about how Cain managed to get his own mansion before his siblings even got their act together. And then the king enters with the 2 girls. Cain has a minor panic attack, realizing he definitely can't spill the beans about both girls calling him daddy last night. The king thanks Cain for rescuing his daughter, while the duke also expresses his sentiment, appreciating Cain for saving his daughter, Silk. The king gets straight to business and casually drops the bombshell. He wants Cain to take both his and the duke's daughters as his future wives. No wedding bells gonna bell yet. They will wait for Cain to hit adulthood. After all, he's already shared some cozy, threesome moments with them, so no one will ever take them as brides now. The king suggests Cain better accept this offer before the gods decide to zap him with some divine retribution. Turns out, this brilliant matchmaking scheme was cooked up by the count to dig into Cain's real identity. To the king's shock, both daughters are keen on tying the knot with Cain. Fearing his great accomplishments, he was determined to keep Cain in this kingdom. Cain, however, thinks he's stumbled into the worst episode of his life. With no guidance from his father and the pressure mounting like a bad reality TV show, with no other option but to give in, Cain accepts to have sex with them.
I beg your pardon?
Cain accepts to become their husband. Talisha and Silk are thrilled, reminiscing about their shared nights, while Cain awkwardly explains it was all just a mix-up due to the creative positions they found themselves in. They asked him what he was rambling on about, and Cain stammers that he was just talking about how the beds were positioned. Poor guy can't get a break, but he sure can get a threesome.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now.
A few days later, Cain goes to the royal church to have a chat with the gods. Xanem wonders what took Cain so long, and Cain says his stats have gotten so ridiculously high they'd become a bit of a burden. And Cain is now officially the strongest human alive. Xanem, seeing Cain's stats are off the charts, asks if he wants to level up to demigod status. But even with those godlike stats, there are still limits to what he can achieve on his own. Xanem advises him to build some strong relationships. Then Xanem cheekily asks Cain if he could whip up some entertainment using his past life knowledge. Cain, thrilled at the idea, promises to create a game that'll blow everyone's minds. Xanem and the god of technology practically beg him to get on with it. Later that day, Rainey is out shopping for clothes, and Cain, fed up with her Brocon obsession, bolts outside and runs into Parma, the girl he saved 5 years ago. Her uncle, Tamanis, introduces himself and is flabbergasted to learn Kane's a noble. Kane, trying to keep things low-key, asks Tamanis to treat him like his daughter's boyfriend and check out his shop. It's an antique store with Tamanis' masterpieces. Kane asks if he can make a special order for him and shows Tamanis the blueprints for the game he's trying to make. Tamanis, intrigued, takes a look and realizes Kane's idea might just be the best thing. With such a killer idea, Tamanis thinks this game is bound to be a smash hit. Kane, eager to get things rolling, offers him a full gold coin for the prototype. Tamanis, feeling a bit uncomfortable with such a hefty payment, tries to refuse, but Kane insists, saying it's an investment in their relationship. Tamanis, now flattered and motivated, accepts and promises to whip up the best game board imaginable. Kane, feeling all warm and fuzzy inside, heads out of the store. But he's soon met with Rainey, who looks ready to unleash her inner storm. She's fuming about why he didn't come to see all the fabulous clothes she tried on for him. Kane, who tries not to be diplomatic, says she'd look the same in every outfit anyway. Ugly. Inadvertently smashing her self-esteem like a wrecking ball. Rainey, stung by his remark, decides to teach her brother a lesson in the most painful way possible. She spends the whole night trying on different outfits to dazzle her Oni-chan, and will now punish him by having him try them on. Just when Kane thought his luck was running out, Sylvia swoops in like a hero and announces that Tamanis has finished the prototype. Kane, eager to see it, is flabbergasted that it looks exactly like the reversey game he envisioned. They spend the afternoon testing out the game, and Tamanis is convinced this will be the next big thing and is positive it will become a bestseller. Kane, always thinking ahead, suggests they create a fancier version for the wealthier people. After all, wealthy folks love their bling. He proposes making 50 deluxe versions for the nobles and 1,000 of the regular kind for the masses. Tamanis, looking like he's just seen the light, realizes he's dealing with a genius. But of course, his company doesn't have the cash flow to pull off such a grand plan all at once. So, Kane decides to slam a handful of gold coins onto the table. Seeing this, Tamanis promises to crank out the boards as fast as possible. They seal the deal with an off-brand patent and present their creation to the commerce god and vow their commitment to the contract. Board starts glowing with a golden aura in front of them and vanishes, fulfilling their contract with the gods. Kane adds one last request. He wants an over-the-top game for the royal family. Tamanis, practically swooning with excitement, feels like he's just been given a golden ticket, and Parma thinks he's amazing for having a long, hard, strong connections with the king. Kane thinks she doesn't even know half of the juicy details, probably because the gods are too busy enjoying the game he created for them. The next day is the big debut ceremony, and Garm gives Kane a heads up. Watch out for the parade of parents trying to introduce their daughters to him. Kane, unfazed, says he gonna clap every girl but not going to marry anyone, because he's planning to build the biggest harem ever. Garm is taken aback, wondering who is the father here. Inside the castle, Kane spots Cornigo with his children and thinks he looks as appealing as The Duke and Silk make their entrance, and Kane can't help but feels scared by the Duke's creepy smile. Duke thanks Kane for rescuing his daughter, Silk, and hopes for a mutually banging relationship. Kane, realizing he's stuck but not about to back down in front of his own father. Kane tells Silk she's the most beautiful girl in the land, and he promises he'll never ditch her like her father's ex-wife, who is found in a six-summy situation with guards, because his father looks like a bag and his snake is also smaller than a micro dick. Also, let's not talk about his ugly face. Kane closes his remarks by saying he will never gonna ditch her.
Sensational.
Duke also jumps in the roast session and says Garm looks like a dirt bag filled with shit, and Kane is a motherfucker. Garm, feeling protective about his son, steps in and tells the Duke that his daughter Silk is going to suck the soul out of Kane tonight. As they walk away, Garm grumbles that Kane has managed to obliterate every ounce of his self-esteem. Kane, feeling oddly proud, says he's glad that he knows his reality. The royal guards blow their trumpets, and the king makes his grand entrance. Kane, however, is too busy drooling over the princess's beauty to pay much attention to the king's speech. Afterward, Kane greets the king and says the princess is more beautiful than a goddess, leaving him gasping for air. And Kane promises he'll never ditch her like her father's ex-wife, who is found in a six-summy situation with royal guards, because his father looks like a bag and his snake is also smaller than a micro dick. Also, let's not talk about his f***ing ugly face. King tells Garm if he had slept earlier that night, this punk would never have been born. Cain says Garm is not a bad boy, but Talisha is a bad bitch because last night she was calling him daddy. Cain then apologizes for his earlier banter and tells like and subscribe and presents the king with a gift, the Reversey game he developed with Tamanis. The king, intrigued, wants to hear all about this game. After discovering his daughter calling Cain daddy last night, King orders Cain to his room later or face execution. Cain reluctantly agrees. Garm, curious about Cain's sudden business acumen, is told by Cain that he had to get rich to support his mansion because he's now wealthier than his old-ass broke dad. Garm, surprisingly accepting the jab, admits he just wants his kids to be more successful than him. He also advises Cain to make some friends his own age. Cain is pleased to have a dad who not only helps him roast people but also cares about his social life. Just then, Silk swoops in, trying to make sure Tellys doesn't get a chance with him. They settle down, but Cornigo's kids crash their party. Cornigo's kid comments on Silk's dress, and she tries her best to stay silent. One of Cornigo's lackeys suggests Cain make an exit while Habit is having a private chat. Cain tries to introduce himself, but Habit tells him to apologize for interrupting Mrs. Silk, making her even more upset. Cain, undeterred, insists Habit should apologize first. If not, he is going to break his leg. Infuriated, Habit challenges Cain to catch me outside. Silk is worried that Cain is going to be destroyed, and she does everything she can to hug him and tries to develop plot. Meanwhile, Habit, clearly feeling left out, snaps and demands the fight to be started already. Silk's so focused on clinging to Cain that she's practically glued to him, ignoring Habit's rantings to protect Cain. Habit's minions, enraged, start performing a rain dance. One of them, thinking he's a better rain dancer, starts casting a spell to summon lightning. They use their magic on Cain, but nothing happens. The other kid also tries dancing magic, but nothing happens. Silk, fed up, calls out their nonsense, declaring Cain is no ordinary kid, he's a baron. She proudly announces that Cain is the third son of Margrave Garm and has saved the princess from a horde of 30 orcs. She introduces him as Cain. Habit bowed down to Cain. One of Cornigo's lackeys is so terrified he starts begging for forgiveness and scurries away like cockroaches fleeing from a light. Once they're gone, Silk realizes she could have revealed Cain's status all along but chooses to make them look foolish instead. She says she'll tell the princess about it. Cain pleads with her not to spill the beans, but Silk promises to keep it quiet if tonight they go out on a date. Just then, Tellys walks in and demands to know what's being kept secret. Cain quickly stops Silk from talking, but Tellys tells Cain that he is touching Silk's lip and she is going to snitch about this to King. Silk then casually mentions their date plans, making Tellys green with envy and demanding a date of her own. Cain, finding her cute, agrees to take her out as well. The king, overhearing, asks what's going on. Tellys spills the beans saying they are going on a clapping date, and Cain realizes he is and the king announces they're going to have a serious man-to-man talk. Cain knows he's going to be destroyed by King for his jokes. Next day, King wants to play Reversey with Cain, but Count holds him down. Cain thinks he gonna leave early today, but then Duke shows up to congratulate Cain on his miraculous game and invites him for a game of Reversey. After a week, Cain finally decides to check out his new mansion. But to his surprise, it's a rundown mansion that looks like it hasn't seen a broom in decades. Armed with his magic, Cain decides to clean up the joint. With the power of magic, the whole place inside and out gets a magical makeover. The entire mansion, along with the backyard, is automatically cleaned and repaired. The mansion is transformed from a haunted house into a palace fit for royalty. Sylvia, thrilled to be his personal
I beg your pardon?
maid, shows up with a full entourage of maids and a butler, so they can do some gangbang later. She instructs them to start cleaning, only to find that there isn't a speck of dust left. Cain casually mentions that he did all the cleaning with magic. Colin, the butler, is gobsmacked that nobody's freaking out over Cain's mind-blowing abilities. Sylvia starts prepping to handle all of Cain's stuff, and Colin tells him to head home. Totally forgotten, Cain realizes his older brothers are coming over today. Back at Garm's mansion, Cain's brothers give him a high five for scoring his own mansion before they did. They're pretty stoked to have him as their younger bro. Cain gives his family a grand tour of his new mansion, but Garm's looking around confused. He remembers this place as a total wreck. He asks Cain if he's the miracle worker behind this transformation. Cain casually admits he gave it a bit of a facelift with some magic. Sarah's beaming with pride, saying she's raised a real champ, unlike Garm's previous wife, who doesn't even know how to suck. Garm grumbles that the place could use more decor. The nobles these days flaunt their status with fancy paintings, vases, and even mounted monsters. Cain thinks he's got the perfect fix. He vanishes for a moment. Sylvia screams her lungs out, and all the maids are scared of the red dragon in front of them. Garm is baffled and asks Cain what's up with the dragon. Cain nonchalantly says, "Oh, that's just a red dragon." Garm says, "Okay, but Garm wants to know why he's got a mythical beast hanging around. Cain proudly admits he single-handedly took down the dragon, a beast so tough it's never been beaten before. Garm's thrilled to have such a powerhouse for a son. The red dragon is worth 10,000 platinum coins here, which Cain realizes is a cool $100 million back in his old world. Meanwhile, Sarah, having found the bathroom, screams with joy and rushes out, saying the toilet made her feel better than Garm ever did. Garm, thinking Sarah's just being dramatic, decides to check out this magical throne for himself. After Garm steps inside, he realizes he's been living under a rock his whole life and thinks this luxury will wow his guests. Cain, on the other hand, is wondering why on earth he'd want to deal with any visitors at all. Garm explains that every noble with a mansion has to throw a debut party and invite all the nobles of society. Cain groans at the thought and wishes he could just go back to being a broke guy. Colin offers to handle the guest list to make things easier for Cain. While scanning the list, Cain sees Cornigo's name and wishes he could erase it with a magic wand. The king isn't on the list, because only the high-ranking nobles can invite royalty. Cain starts to stress about all the prep and gift-giving and is clueless about what to give his guests. Sylvia suggests he get creative with his gifts along with his unique form of hospitality, which sparks a light bulb moment for Cain. Using his magical prowess, Cain crafts a fancy glass cup, since porcelain is the only material used for tableware. For the food, Cain decides to serve hamburgers, and Sylvia declares it the best thing she's ever tasted. As for drinks, Sylvia sips on PG grape juice and loves it, but she is still unsure about how she feels, but she's hooked and wants more. She keeps downing bottle after bottle, and just as she's about to turn into a bubbly mess, Colin arrives to inform Cain that the king has requested his presence. He's infuriated with Cain, demanding to know why he's been left off the guest list. He slams his fist on the desk and declares he's the one who gave Cain the mansion. And Duke decides to put petrol on fire and waves his invite in the king's face, and smugly remarks that Silk is clearly the superior daughter. The king is practically on the brink of tears, lamenting how Cain is treating his future father-in-law. Cain tries to come clean, saying he's never had the chance to hand over the invitation because he's been very busy, so he hand-delivers it for him. The king snatches the invite, flaunts it like a tween who just got a love letter from their crush, and casually mentions that Tellys will be attending as well. The debut party kicks off, and Cain welcomes everyone inside with open arms. The Duke and Silk arrive, and Cain doesn't miss the chance to call Silk the most beautiful.
Ah, shit! Here you go again.
They see his red dragon statue, and Silk daydreams about moving in. Colin nudges Cain that it's time for his speech. Cain thanks everyone for coming and hopes his modest offerings meet their standards. He raises a glass for a toast, and his parents are instantly hooked on the fizzy drink. Even the glasses look like they were plucked from a treasure chest. Cain lets them know that he personally prepared them as gifts for everyone to take home. The king shows up and is immediately enchanted by the sparkling drink. One sip, and he's on cloud 9 from the soda's effervescent kick. As for the hamburger, he takes a bite, and the meat squishes out a rich, creamy white sauce, which he devours like a hungry dog. It's like a symphony of flavors dancing on his taste buds. Meanwhile, Tally seems to be having fun eating Cain's meat. The queen tells the king that she just experienced a different kind of fun and begs Cain to install the same sprayer in the royal bathroom. Curious, the king tries out the sprayer for himself. The resulting noise is so loud, it's like he's announcing to the whole kingdom that he's having a royal blast. He exits the room pretending he wasn't the one making climax noises and demands that Cain immediately install one in his bathroom too, because obviously, he's missing out on the ultimate in bathroom indulgence. Cain promises to satisfy their daughter. He promises he will install the spray, and the king praises his hospitality, saying it's top-notch. From the food to the lavish house, calling it the epitome of luxury. The crowd cheers for Cain, celebrating his success. However, Colin informs him that trouble is on the way. Then enters Cornigo, who strolls in and refers to Kane's mansion as a doghouse. Kane quickly tries to hush Colin before he mentions the dragon statue. After seeing the statue, he pissed his pants, and Kane apologizes for his dragon statue scaring him. Cornigo, unimpressed, dismisses the place with a sneer, claiming that Kane's taste is poor. But everyone thinks Cornigo's attitude is vile for a person who arrived after the king. At the dinner table, Sylvia offers Cornigo some of the carbonated wine. Despite his initial grimace, he ends up loving every sip, proving once again that he's all talk and no taste. Kane offers Cornigo a hamburger, which Cornigo immediately dislikes, but he keeps devouring every last bite like a bitch. The other nobles are watching Cornigo's poor manners towards Kane, and Colin nudges him, suggesting he tried to keep it together, which sparks a genius idea in Kane's mind. Kane brings out some fancy glasses and downplays them as just a humble offering. Cornigo snorts, saying they're meager, but demands to take every single one of them, along with the recipe for the burger. Kane refuses, saying he's saving the glasses for everyone else. Cornigo, now thoroughly ticked off, bellows for 100 glasses like he's ordering from a fast food joint. Kane scrambles to buy time and teases Cornigo with the promise of the kingdom's biggest treasure, even grander than a jewel. Cornigo's eyes light up with greedy anticipation. Just then, Kane introduces the kingdom's biggest, and it turns out to be the king himself, popping up behind Kane like a surprise party guest. Cornigo is shocked, wondering why he's at the home of such a lowly person. The king, fuming, reminds Cornigo that Kane saved his daughter and threatens to strip him of his rank if he keeps up with his disrespectful behavior. And the Duke wonders if he came after the king, trying to wriggle out of his awkward situation. Cornigo says he was just blown away by the meal and the hospitality. The king, not buying it, tells Cornigo to act like a proper noble and commands him to flee. Silk approaches Kane, giving him the side eye, and sources out that he orchestrated the whole shindig. The Duke, looking at Kane like he's just caught him with his hand in the cookie jar, and asks if Kane was playing them all along. And Kane replies yes, he was playing with them, which angers King a little bit. A week later, Kane was strolling along when Captain Diam popped up out of nowhere. The Prime Minister sent Kane to drop off some monster materials, so Diam led him to the storage room. However, Kane thinks the room is way too small for his massive monster. Diam, looking perplexed, wonders if the room's size is meant to match the red dragon in Kane's mansion. But Kane clarifies, nope, it's more like the legendary Earth Dragon, the one that even a squad of buff adventurers couldn't take down. Diam is flabbergasted but tells Kane to just dump the monsters in the middle of the field. Kane obliges, releasing a parade of rare monsters from his item box. Seeing the monstrous crowd, Diam asks if Kane's a hero or God's sidekick, which makes Kane break into a cold sweat for a second. As Kane tries to skedaddle, Diam invites him to train with the other knights and meet their leader. Kane realizes he's stepping into another hot mess. Diam had introduced Kane to the troops, announcing they'd be having a duel. One soldier questioned if it was wise to go toe-to-toe with a 10-year-old. Diam, with a mischievous grin, suggested the soldier should face Kane first. The soldier, apprehensive, lets Kane make the first move. Kane, eager to show off, activates his boost ability and vanishes faster than you can say you, then takes the soldier out with a single, well-placed slash. Kane tries to make a quick exit, but Diam challenges him to fight the whole squad at once. Just as Kane was about to get steamrolled, the leader shouted at everyone to freeze. She took one look at the situation and couldn't believe they were about to gang up on a kid, so she gave Kane a big, comforting elf hug. Kane was stunned, not just by the hug, but also because the leader was an elf. She turned to Diam, asking why he was putting a child in such a predicament. Diam explained that Kane single-handedly saved the princess from a horde of 30 orcs. The elf lady finally got it, and, with a dramatic flair, asked Kane to duel her with a look that could freeze lava. The soldiers, watching this, figured Kane had lived a solid 10 years and wished him a happy trip to the afterlife. Kane, noticing she was wielding a real sword, asked her why she needed it. She smirked and said it would make things more interesting, and charged at him with a burst of energy. Kane tried to keep up, but her moves were as smooth as a cat. She cranked up her physical abilities, and they collided in a spectacular clash of swords. The soldiers were awestruck, seeing someone who could actually match her speed. Kane, not one to back down, tried to deflect her attacks and look for openings, but her defense is too strong. Desperate, he activated his magic ability, zipping towards her. Just when she thought she had the upper hand, Kane vanished and reappeared next to her, his sword pointed teasingly at her throat. Kane declares the duel over, but Tafana, clearly thrilled, proclaims it's the best climax of her life and hugs him like he's a teddy bear in a love story. She then announces she's going to him. Marry him. Cain, still in shock, points out that they've only known each other for a hot 10 minutes. Tufana considers this and agrees, though she introduces herself as Tufana, the Duke's daughter. She reassures him that even though she's older, elves live up to 300 years, so she'll stay young and fresh for a long while. Cain, feeling like he's in a bad dream, tries to escape from what he's starting to see as an elf-themed nightmare. He tells her she needs her father's approval first. Tufana shrugs it off, saying it's no big deal because her family already decided she's not allowed home until she finds a spouse. Still, Cain isn't okay with it because he needs to ask an entire army of people for permission first. He asks Diam to back him up, but Diam has already fallen asleep. Cain, bracing himself for the worst, is hauled into the king's castle, where the king, baffled, wonders why Cain's back so soon. Tufana jumps up, and her voice takes on a dramatic, almost soap opera tone as she declares they're getting married. The king is baffled and asks what's going on. Cain, trying to explain the situation, says he hit her with his wooden stick so hard and penetrated deep into her defenses that now they're engaged. Diam jumps in to clarify that Tufana isn't just any leader. She's from a kingdom of elves and is practically their princess. The king, delivering a blow to Tufana's romantic dreams, informs her that Cain is already engaged to his daughter, along with the dukes. Tufana thinks Cain must be some kind of miracle worker to have charmed both the king's daughter and the dukes. The king knows how hard it must be, but Tufana thinks that she wants to marry him even more now, because he penetrated him so hard with his long sword that she can't let him go. Everyone's curious about what kind of delusional optimism she's on, but the king says they'll only discuss it further after she gets her father's blessing. Tufana eagerly agrees and drags Cain along, announcing they're going to battle with their sticks to deepen their love. The king is perplexed at how the strongest knight could be defeated so easily and asks Diam if he knows anything about Cain. Diam, clueless, remembers Cain's panic when the gods were mentioned, raising the king's suspicion. The count thinks they should test Cain by revealing the mythical book he carries. Cain is about to collapse from a week of grueling training when he hears Tufana's voice calling him. He tries to escape, but Diam grabs him and drags him to the king's room. The king, noticing Cain's grumpy demeanor, asks why he looks so down. Cain replies bluntly that he's tired of seeing the king's ugly face. That's when the king realizes that things might be getting out of hand. The king tells Cain he's brought him here to unveil something truly special. The count presents a magical tome, an emperor-level grimoire that's been handed down from the very first king, Ea. Cain asks if he can read the book, and the king gives him the green light. As Cain flips through it, he realizes he already knows these spells and is thrilled to finally understand how to cast them properly. The king has a revelation and explains that this book is written in a language that no one else can decipher. Cain takes another look and knows he is The king reveals that the text is written in Japanese, a language no one has been able to read since its creation. Cain thinks it all makes sense since he definitely also reincarnated. Cain is asked again to spill the beans about who he really is, and he realizes it's time to drop the act, but thinks he can trust these folks with his secrets. He asks them to keep his revelations under wraps or he'll be forced to pack his bags and leave the kingdom. After the king gives a nod, Cain goes on to reveal that he has memories from his previous life. Turns out he used to live in a land called Japan, the same place where the first king hailed from. He apologizes for not dropping this bombshell sooner, and Garm, always the skeptic, questions if he's really his son, even if he didn't want to be born into such a tight-fisted family. The gods confirmed Garm as his father when Cain turned 5, and the room is stunned by this divine confirmation. Cain goes on to describe the gods are a bunch of crazy nutcases, though he meets them regularly. Garm insists on seeing Cain's real status, and the room goes into full-blown panic mode when they see his stats are off the charts. The king is left scratching his head, unsure of what to do next. Cain's title as God's Chosen is supposed to be the pinnacle of humanity, where even kings should bow. Cain pleads for patience, assuring them that he's not quite ready for royal bowing just yet. Despite his previous life memories, Cain is living the dream because this is the life he's always wanted. He's got a loving family, superpowers, and people who actually give a damn about him. It's like winning the lottery of life, and he's got everything he ever wanted, plus a better family. Cain thanks his dad for raising him right and apologizes to the king for keeping secrets, but he hopes they can continue their same old routine. The king nods and assures him he'll be treated like any other royal pain in the neck. But then he gets a wild idea. Why not just make Cain the king before anyone can say, "F*** child labor. Tefana bursts in, flaunting her dad's approval for their wedding. So much for a quiet life. Another girl joins the harem, and off they go. The Duke reassures the king that Cain will stay the same old Cain, and the king decides that, yes, they can indeed trust him. He orders everyone to zip it about Cain's true identity. His only hope is that Cain will protect the kingdom, his family, all the lovely ladies in his life, and anyone else who might need a superhero in their corner. And that's it for this video. The next part link are in the pinned comment and in description. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. Until then, watch this video.